Have you ever wondered how the concept of owning another human being came into existence? It's a question that can make us uncomfortable, but it's vital to explore if we wish to understand the breadth and depth of human history. Slavery, in its many forms, is a complex and vast subject that has permeated the annals of time. It's a dark tapestry woven into the fabric of our shared past, a blemish on the face of humanity. Yet it's a part of our history that we must confront, for to forget or ignore it would be to neglect the lessons it taught us. From the earliest civilizations to the modern era, the practice of one human owning another has been a haunting presence. It evolved, shifted, and took on different forms, but always it was a harsh reflection of the power dynamics of the time. In the ancient world, slaves were often prisoners of war, debtors, or individuals viewed as inferior due to their race or ethnicity. In these societies, slavery was not only accepted but institutionalized, viewed as a necessary part of maintaining order and economic stability. As we move forward in history, we find slavery transforming, adapting to the changing societal structures and economic demands. In the Middle Ages, serfdom became prevalent, a form of slavery bound to the land rather than an individual master. Then came the Transatlantic slave trade, a horrific and brutal period that saw millions of African men, women, and children forcibly taken from their homes and sold into a life of hard labor and unimaginable suffering. Even today, in the 21st century, we grapple with the remnants of this deplorable practice. Human trafficking, forced labor, and other forms of modern-day slavery persist, a stark reminder of the long shadow that this aspect of our history casts. But as we delve into this topic, it's essential to remember that this is not just a story of oppression and injustice. It's also a story of resistance, resilience, and the ongoing fight for freedom and equality. Let's embark on a journey through time to understand the origins and evolution of slavery. The roots of slavery can be traced back to the earliest civilizations. In the cradle of civilization, ancient Mesopotamia, we find the first written codes of law, and within them, the first legal references to slavery. Slaves in Mesopotamia were often war captives, debtors, or those born into servitude. They were considered property, yet they could accumulate their own property and even achieve freedom under certain conditions. Moving towards the land of the pharaohs, Egypt, slaves were primarily captives from foreign wars. They toiled on construction projects, in homes and in fields. However, Egyptian slavery was not racially based, and slaves could rise to positions of power and prestige. In the city-states of ancient Greece, slavery was prevalent and deeply embedded in society. Slaves were used in a wide range of roles, from domestic servants to skilled craftsmen to rowers in warships. Interestingly, the Greeks didn't view slavery as a necessary evil, but rather as a cornerstone of their civilization's prosperity. The mighty empire of Rome was no stranger to slavery either. Slavery was a key component of the Roman economy and society. Rome's slaves were captives from its many military conquests, and they were used in a vast array of roles, including gladiators, servants, laborers, and even teachers. Yet, like in Mesopotamia and Egypt, Roman slaves could also earn or be granted their freedom. However, it's important to note that slavery in these ancient societies was different from the race-based chattel slavery that would later emerge. In ancient times, slavery was often a result of war or debt, not one's race or origin. Slaves could sometimes earn their freedom, and their children were not automatically born into slavery. Moreover, slaves were not always treated as subhuman or inferior. They could hold positions of status and trust. Though the form of slavery in these ancient societies was different from what we commonly think of today, it laid the groundwork for what was to come. This was the dawn of slavery, a system that would shape and scar our world in countless ways. As we move into the Middle Ages, slavery takes on a new form. With the fall of the Roman Empire, the nature of slavery in Europe transformed. The rigid Roman system of slaves and masters gave way to a more fluid system known as serfdom. This was not slavery as we traditionally understand it, but a form of bonded labor. Serfs were tied to the land they worked on, and while they were not owned outright by their lords, they were heavily restricted in their freedoms. They could not marry, travel, or change their occupation without their lord's permission. Yet, while serfdom was the dominant form of labor in Europe, traditional slavery was far from extinct. In the Viking societies of Scandinavia, for instance, slaves known as thralls were common. These thralls were often prisoners of war, captured during the Vikings' infamous raids. Outside of Europe, in Africa and the Middle East, the slave trade was a thriving industry. In Africa, internal slave trades saw prisoners of war, criminals, and debtors sold into slavery within the continent. Additionally, the trans-Saharan slave trade carried countless Africans north into the Middle East and Europe. In the Middle East, the Islamic slave trade was in full swing. Slaves were used in a variety of roles, from soldiers to administrators, and were drawn from a wide range of regions, including sub-Saharan Africa, Eastern Europe, and Central Asia. While the Islamic world had laws in place to protect the rights of slaves, the reality was often far harsher. It's important to understand that slavery in the Middle Ages was not a monolithic institution. It varied greatly from region to region and culture to culture. Yet, regardless of the specific forms it took, the institution of slavery continued to cause untold suffering for those caught in its grasp. The Middle Ages set the stage for a dramatic escalation in the scale and brutality of slavery. The dawn of the Age of Exploration marked a dark chapter in human history. The transatlantic slave trade, a horrendous enterprise that spanned over 3 centuries, was a critical component of this era. An estimated 12 to 15 million African individuals were forcibly transported across the Atlantic Ocean, forever altering the demographic and cultural landscape of the Americas and Africa. The scale of the trade was staggering. Slaves were packed into ships with inhumane conditions, often chained together and forced to endure a journey of unimaginable suffering. Disease was rampant and mortality rates were high. The Middle Passage, as this leg of the journey was known, was a brutal testament to the disregard for human life that characterized the transatlantic slave trade. Once in the Americas, slaves faced a life of grueling labor, harsh discipline, and dehumanization. They were treated as property, to be bought, sold, and worked to death at the whim of their owners. Their cultural identities were often erased, their languages and religions suppressed, as they were forced to adopt the customs of their oppressors. The impact of the transatlantic slave trade was profound and far-reaching. Economically, it provided the labor that fueled the growth of the plantation economy in the Americas, particularly in the production of sugar, tobacco, and cotton. But the human cost was incalculable, as millions of lives were lost and countless others were forever scarred by the trauma of enslavement. The transatlantic slave trade also left deep social and political scars. It contributed to the racialization of slavery as Africans and their descendants were singled out for their supposed inferiority. It legitimized and institutionalized racism, creating a legacy of prejudice and discrimination that persists to this day. The transatlantic slave trade was a horrific chapter in history, but its end was not the end of slavery. As we move forward, it is crucial to remember the lessons of the past, to acknowledge the pain and suffering caused by the transatlantic slave trade, and to work towards a future where such atrocities are never repeated. While we might like to think of slavery as a thing of the past, it unfortunately persists in different forms even today. In the modern era, slavery has taken on various nefarious forms, with human trafficking and forced labor being among the most widespread. These are not the shackled and chained individuals of yesteryears, but people coerced into servitude through manipulation, threats, and violence. Human trafficking, often referred to as modern-day slavery, involves the illegal trade of people for exploitation or commercial gain. Every year, countless men, women, and children are trafficked worldwide, trapped in a life where their basic rights are denied and their freedom is a distant memory. Meanwhile, forced labor represents another prevalent form of modern slavery. This is where individuals are coerced to work under the threat of some form of punishment. It's not just about physical violence. It can also involve the retention of identity papers, threats of denunciation to immigration authorities, and false promises about payments and conditions. The scale of modern slavery is staggering. According to estimates from international organizations, there are over 40 million people in some form of modern slavery around the world today. Yes, you heard it right, 40 million. That's more than the population of Canada. This is not confined to any specific region or country. Modern slavery is a global issue, touching virtually every corner of the world. However, it is most prevalent in regions with high levels of poverty and corruption. In many cases, victims are lured with the promise of a better life, only to find themselves trapped in a cycle of exploitation and abuse. As we delve deeper into the 21st century, it's crucial to remember that the fight against slavery is far from a historical matter. It's a contemporary struggle that demands our attention and action. The fight against slavery is far from over. Throughout history, there have always been those who have fought against slavery. In the vast tapestry of human history, there are figures who stand tall, their voices echoing through time. These are the people who, in the face of adversity, fought against the institution of slavery, championing the cause of human rights. Let's take a journey back to the late 18th century, to a man named William Wilberforce, a member of the British Parliament. Wilberforce was a man of conviction. He used his political platform to rally against the transatlantic slave trade, tirelessly proposing bills and engaging in debates. His relentless efforts culminated in the passing of the Slave Trade Act of 1807, marking the end of the British slave trade. Now, let's cross the Atlantic to the United States, where we meet Harriet Tubman. Born into slavery, Tubman escaped her captors and became a beacon of hope for many enslaved people. She was a key figure in the Underground Railroad, a network of secret routes and safe houses that helped slaves escape to free states. Tubman's courage and determination led to the liberation of countless lives, making her an enduring symbol of resistance against slavery. And then there was the Abolition movement, a collective endeavor that sought to dismantle slavery. This movement was a testament to the power of unity, bringing together people from different walks of life, united by a common purpose. Scholars, politicians, activists, and everyday citizens rallied together, their voices forming a resounding call for freedom. The abolition movement was instrumental in ending legal slavery. The 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, ratified in 1865, abolished slavery and involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime, marking a significant victory in the fight against slavery. However, this was not the end of the fight. Slavery took on new forms, morphing into practices such as forced labor and human trafficking. Their fight continues today as millions around the world work to end modern forms of slavery. As we reflect on the history of slavery, we must confront some uncomfortable truths. Slavery was not merely an unfortunate chapter in our past, but an institution that has left deep, enduring scars on societies around the world. Its echoes can still be heard today, reverberating through the generations and shaping our present in ways both subtle and stark. From racial disparities and social injustices to the economic imbalances that persist, the legacy of slavery is complex, pervasive, and profound. In the Americas, for example, centuries of enslavement have shaped social hierarchies and economic systems, creating enduring inequality. The racial wealth gap, for instance, is a tangible manifestation of this legacy. In Africa, the slave trade disrupted societies and economies, and its impacts are still felt today. Entire communities were torn apart, cultures were eroded, and development was stunted. In Europe, the wealth amassed from the slave trade fueled industrial growth and imperialism, creating power dynamics that still influence international relations. Yet, as we grapple with this painful legacy, it is crucial that we do not lose sight of the resilience, strength, and spirit of those who were enslaved. Their stories of resistance, survival, and triumph amidst unimaginable hardship serve as powerful reminders of the indomitable human spirit. Remembering slavery is not about wallowing in guilt or pointing fingers. It's about acknowledging the past, understanding its impact on our present, and using this knowledge to shape a more just and equitable future. It's about learning from our history so we can better understand the roots of contemporary issues and work towards solutions. It's about ensuring that we never repeat the mistakes of the past. In this reflection, we find not only a call to remember, but also a call to action. A call to challenge prejudice, to fight inequality, to speak out against injustice wherever we see it. We must remember the history of slavery, not to dwell on the past, but to shape a future free from oppression. In today's journey through history, we've uncovered the origins, evolution, and persistence of slavery. From its dawn in the ancient world, slavery metamorphosed, adapting to the times, yet remaining an unshakable blight on humanity. The Middle Ages saw it persist, and the transatlantic trade of the 16th to 19th centuries amplified its horrors on an unprecedented scale. Even in our modern era, forms of slavery endure, hidden in the shadows. Yet, we've also seen the courageous battles waged to abolish this institution, a testament to humanity's capacity for change and justice. We've reflected on the harsh realities of slavery, not to dwell on the darkness, but to learn, to grow, and to ensure history does not repeat itself. The fight against modern forms of slavery continues, and it's a fight we all have a stake in. Though the history of slavery is a dark one, it is a part of our shared human history that must not be forgotten.